Your profit margins are unacceptable, and I can see at least 3 areas for immediate cost reduction, the guy in the expensive suit said, tapping his tablet. Starting with employee compensation. I'm sitting there across from Carl Donovan, the new regional manager from VetCorp Solutions, listening to him explain how my 24 years at Prairie View Animal Clinic is now worth exactly 65% of what I've been making. Nothing personal, Dr. Patterson. Just business efficiency. My name is Matthew Patterson. I'm 51 years old, and I've been taking care of the animals around Billings, Montana since I got out of the Navy back in 2000. What started as a job at a small family clinic after my service turned into something I built my life around. I was the one who helped this place grow from a 2-room operation to the busiest vet clinic in 3 counties. When would these changes take effect? I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. Next pay period, Carl answered, already looking back at his screen. We'll need your decision by Friday. When old Dr. Hoffman decided to retire and sell the practice last month, we'd all been nervous. But he promised us VetCorp understood what we'd built here. They respect our values, he'd said at the farewell dinner. Now, 3 weeks after the sale closed, I'm facing a choice between a 35% pay cut or walking away from the place that's been my second home. Here's the thing, this wasn't just about my salary. My wife Sarah finished her cancer treatments 2 years ago, and we're still chipping away at those medical bills. Our son Tommy starts his sophomore year next fall, and we've been saving every penny for his tuition at Montana State. The mortgage on our house has 3 years left, and we've been counting down the months until we own it free and clear. Plus, there's something these corporate types don't get. In the Navy, we had a saying, ship, shipmate, self. You take care of the mission first, your people second, yourself last. I've been living by that code for 30 years, and now some MBA from Chicago is telling me it's bad for business. I appreciate the transparency, I said, standing up. I'll have my answer by Friday. Carl nodded without looking up. Oh, and Matthew, we're implementing new protocols next week. Training materials are in your email. Outside his office, I stopped by Nancy's desk. She's been our receptionist for 12 years, and her worried expression told me she already knew what was coming. You too? I asked quietly. She nodded. 30% cut plus reduced hours. What are you going to do? I looked around at the waiting room. Families with their pets, a rancher with his cattle dog, kids holding hamster carriers. I'm not sure yet, but something tells me we're about to find out what this place really becomes. That night at dinner, I couldn't bring myself to tell Sarah about the meeting. She was excited about Tommy's acceptance letter to Montana State, talking about how proud she was that we'd managed to save enough for his sophomore year despite all the medical expenses. How do you tell your wife that the financial security you've worked 24 years to build just got yanked out from under you? Instead, I called my old Navy buddy Jim Rodriguez, who'd opened his own auto repair shop 5 years ago. Best decision I ever made, he told me. Yeah, it was scary at first, but now I answer to myself. No corporate suits telling me how to run my business. After we hung up, I sat in my truck in the driveway thinking. I'd always assumed I'd retire from Prairie View, maybe hand over my patient load to a younger vet someday. The idea of starting over at 51 felt overwhelming, but the more I thought about it, the more it felt like the only real option. The next morning, I called Andrew, our younger vet, who'd joined us 6 months ago after working at a VetCorp clinic in Denver. How bad was it there? I asked him during our lunch break. Bad enough that I left, he said. Everything becomes about numbers. How many appointments per hour, how many add-on services you sell, how much revenue you generate per patient. He pushed his sandwich around on his plate. They wanted me to recommend dental cleanings for every dog over 3 years old, whether they needed it or not. That got my attention. What about the quality of care? What quality? You get 15 minutes per appointment max. If you spend longer, they dock your efficiency rating. Andrew shook his head. I didn't go to vet school to become a salesman. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick and drove out to Dr. Hoffman's place by the lake. He was sitting on his porch with a fishing pole, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. Matt, what brings you out here on a Wednesday? I told him about the meeting with Carl, about the pay cuts, about the new protocols that were coming. His face got darker with every detail. They lied to me, he said finally. Their representatives promised they'd keep the clinic's culture intact. I never would have sold if I'd known. It's not your fault, Doc. You deserved your retirement. I hesitated. I'm thinking about opening my own practice. He was quiet for a long moment, watching his line in the water. You know what, Matt? You should do it. You've got the experience, the client relationships, and this community needs a vet who still remembers why we got into this business. But at my age, starting from scratch? Hell, you're 51, not 81, and you've got something these corporate places don't. You actually give a damn about the animals. That evening, I finally told Sarah everything. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a minute. How much would it cost to start your own clinic? She asked. I've been doing some research. Maybe $200,000 to get started properly. Equipment, lease deposits, licensing, the whole 9 yards. We have $85,000 in savings for Tommy's college, she said slowly. And we could look into refinancing the house. Sarah, I can't ask you to risk our son's education and our home. She took my hand. Honey, you've been taking care of this family for 24 years. You served your country for 8 years before that. Maybe it's time we took care of your dream. I spent that weekend researching everything. SBA loans, equipment financing, commercial real estate. Turns out my military service qualified me for some veteran business programs I didn't even know existed. My disability rating from that helicopter crash in '98 came with some financial benefits I'd never thought to use for business purposes. Monday morning, I walked into Carl's office feeling different, more focused. In the Navy, we called it having your mission parameters locked in. I need to ask you something, Carl, I said, sitting down across from his desk. These new protocols you mentioned, what exactly are we talking about? He pulled up something on his tablet. Standard efficiency improvements. We're targeting 10 appointments per day minimum, up from your current average of 7. Plus mandatory upselling on our premium wellness packages. 10 appointments? That's about 45 minutes per animal, including paperwork and room turnover. 40 minutes, actually. We've streamlined the documentation process. I did the math in my head. 40 minutes to examine an animal, talk to the owner, update records, and clean the room for the next patient. That's not veterinary medicine. That's an assembly line. And these wellness packages? Comprehensive testing suites. Every animal gets the full workup. Blood panels, urinalysis, x-rays if indicated, really drives revenue per patient visit, whether they need it or not. Carl's smile got a little tighter. Prevention is always better than treatment, don't you think? Right then, I knew I was done. This wasn't about saving money or improving efficiency. This was about squeezing every dollar out of people who trusted us with their animals. I'll have my decision for you by Friday, I said, standing up. That week, I started making calls. First to the SBA office in Billings, then to a couple equipment suppliers I'd worked with over the years. Amazing how many doors open when you mention you're a veteran looking to start a small business. I also called my old platoon sergeant, Tony Kowalski, who'd retired to a ranch outside town. You thinking about going into competition with Prairie View? He asked. Something like that. Good. Those corporate assholes bought out my feed store's vet, too. Now they want to charge me $2,400 for what used to cost $1,600. Count me in as your first customer. Wednesday, I drove around Billings looking at commercial spaces. Most were either too small, too expensive, or in the wrong location. Then my realtor showed me the old family practice building on Rimrock Road. It had been empty for 6 months since Dr. Peterson retired. The moment I walked in, I could see it. The waiting room was perfect. Big enough for families with large dogs, separate areas for cats and small animals. The exam rooms had good natural light and proper ventilation. Even better, most of the plumbing and electrical work was already set up for medical use. The owner's motivated, my realtor said. Been empty long enough that he'll consider a lease-to-own arrangement. That night, Sarah and I drove out to look at the building together. She walked through each room, asking practical questions about layout and workflow that I hadn't even thought of. This feels right, she said as we stood in what would be the main exam room. It feels like a huge risk, I replied. Everything worthwhile is a risk. Besides, you've got skills these corporate guys don't. Like what? Like actually caring about your patients. Like knowing Mrs. Henderson's cat by name. Like spending an extra 10 minutes with nervous pet owners instead of rushing them out the door. Friday morning came, and I walked into Carl's office at exactly 9 a.m. with my decision. "I'm submitting my 2 weeks' notice," I said, handing him the envelope. His professional mask slipped for just a second. "You're quitting over a standard market adjustment? I'm pursuing a new opportunity." He leaned back in his chair. "You know, I expected this from some of the support staff, but not from a senior veterinarian. This is how business works, Matthew. Adapt or get left behind." "I understand business just fine," I said, "and I've made a business decision. I hope you've thought this through. Non-compete clauses can be very restrictive." I'd been ready for this. "I've reviewed my contract with an attorney. Montana law severely limits non-compete enforceability for medical professionals, especially in underserved areas." Carl's confident expression faltered slightly. "Well, we'll see about that." The news spread through the clinic like wildfire. By lunch, Nancy, Linda, our head tech, and Andrew had all found ways to pull me aside. "Is it true?" Nancy whispered by the supply closet. "Yeah, my last day is November 15th. What's your plan?" I decided to trust her. "I'm opening my own practice. Found a place on Rimrock Road." Her eyes lit up. "Really? When?" "Probably March or April. Gives me time to get everything set up properly." "Well," she said, glancing around, "when you're ready to hire a receptionist who actually knows your clients, give me a call." Throughout the day, similar conversations happened. Andrew was immediately interested. Linda started asking careful questions about timing. Even some of the newer staff seemed intrigued by the possibility of working somewhere that wasn't focused on quarterly profit margins. My last 2 weeks at Prairie View were the longest of my career. I maintained my professionalism, but Carl had started hovering around my appointments, clipboard in hand, making notes about efficiency opportunities. He'd also scheduled an exit interview for my final day and kept sending emails about my ongoing obligations regarding client solicitation. What Carl didn't know was that I'd already talked to Jim Rodriguez's lawyer buddy about those non-compete clauses. Turns out Montana law severely limits their enforceability for medical professionals, especially when it comes to serving rural communities that need the services. Plus, and here's the thing Carl really didn't understand, I wasn't planning to steal anybody's clients. I was planning to be available when they came looking for me. By Wednesday of my last week, word was getting out despite my efforts to keep quiet. Mrs. Henderson asked me during her cat's checkup, "So where exactly will your new practice be?" "I haven't finalized anything yet," I said carefully, knowing about the new recording system VetCorp had installed for quality assurance. She lowered her voice. "Well, when you do, please let Whiskers and me know. We're not going anywhere else." These conversations happened every day, and each one convinced me I was making the right choice. People weren't just loyal to Prairie View, they were loyal to the care they'd been getting, and VetCorp was about to change that in ways they couldn't see coming. My last day finally arrived. I collected my personal items, said goodbye to the staff who'd become family, and walked out to my truck feeling both sad and excited. As I was pulling out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text from Nancy. Just overheard Carl on a conference call. He told corporate that losing one vet won't make any difference. "How much impact could one guy have?" were his exact words. I smiled and texted back, "Guess we'll find out." The next 4 months were a blur of permits, inspections, equipment purchases, and paperwork. The SBA loan came through faster than expected. Turns out they had a special program for veteran-owned businesses in rural areas. Between that, our savings, and the equipment financing deal I worked out, we had enough to do this right. The best part was getting to use my hands again. I'd forgotten how much I missed building things. In the Navy, we fixed everything ourselves. Helicopters, electronics, plumbing, you name it. Now I was installing exam table mounts, running network cables, and setting up the X-ray room ventilation system. Sarah would come by after work to help paint and organize supplies. "This feels like our place," she said one evening as we were putting up shelving in the pharmacy area. "It is our place. That's the whole point." Tommy came home from his first semester at Montana State and pitched in during Christmas break. Kid's studying pre-vet now, which wasn't entirely surprising. He'd been coming to the clinic with me since he was little. "Dad, this is so much cooler than the corporate place," he said while helping me install the digital X-ray system. "It actually feels like a place where animals matter." Andrew gave his notice at Prairie View right after New Year's. Linda followed 2 weeks later when VetCorp cut her hours again. Nancy submitted her resignation the day we got our state licensing approved. Figured I might as well make it official, she said when she called. When do we open? March 15th. If everything goes according to plan, I'll be there. February was crunch time, final inspections, staff training on our new computer system, and about 100 small details that nobody warns you about when you're planning to open a veterinary clinic. My military training kicked in. Make lists, check everything twice, have backup plans for your backup plans. 2 weeks before opening, I sent a simple announcement to the Billings Gazette. Rimrock Veterinary Clinic opening March 15th. Dr. Matthew Patterson, veterinarian. Comprehensive animal care with a personal touch. That was it. No fancy marketing, no grand opening specials, just letting people know we existed. The response surprised me. My phone started ringing the day the announcement ran. Mrs. Henderson was the first caller. Dr. Patterson? I saw the notice in the paper. Can I schedule Whiskers for his annual checkup? Sure thing, Mrs. Henderson. We'll be taking appointments starting March 15th. Perfect. And Dr. Patterson? Thank you for everything. By the end of that week, we had 25 appointments scheduled for our first month. Word was spreading through the ranching community, the veteran networks, even the feed stores around town. Tony Kowalski called to book his cattle for spring vaccinations. About damn time, he said. You know what Prairie View wanted to charge me for 50 head? $20,400. What's your rate? $1,800 for the same service. Now that's what I call fair pricing. The night before we opened, I walked through the empty clinic one more time. Everything was ready. Exam rooms stocked, computers loaded with our patient management software, appointment books already filling up. Sarah found me standing in the main exam room, just looking around. Second thoughts? She asked. No, just thinking about how different everything feels compared to 5 months ago. Good different or scary different? Both. But mostly good. She squeezed my hand. You ready for this? Ready as I'll ever be. March 15th arrived with a mix of excitement and nerves I hadn't felt since my first deployment. Our first day was supposed to be a soft opening, maybe 6 or 7 appointments to test our systems before ramping up to full capacity. At 7:30 a.m., 30 minutes before we officially opened, I looked out the front window and couldn't believe what I saw. There was a line of trucks and cars stretching across our parking lot. Did you call all these people? Andrew asked, staring at the crowd. No way. We only scheduled 7 appointments for today. Nancy was already at the front desk, booting up our computer system. Word travels fast in a small town, she said with a grin. Plus, Mrs. Henderson's been telling everyone at the feed store about this place for weeks. When we opened the doors, familiar faces poured in. The Henderson family with Whiskers, the Morrison Ranch crew with their border collies, old Pete Martinez, who'd driven 45 minutes from his spread east of town with a truck full of goat carriers. We saw the announcement and figured we'd come check you out, Mrs. Henderson explained. Nobody wanted to wait. By lunch, we'd seen 18 animals. By closing time, that number hit 28. Every client said basically the same thing. They weren't following a clinic, they were following their vet. What really got to me were the small gestures. People brought homemade cookies, congratulation cards, and coffee for the staff. The Martinez family showed up with enough barbecue to feed everyone lunch. One rancher's wife brought a hand-painted sign that read, "Welcome to Rimrock Veterinary, where animals come first." That evening, exhausted but happy, I got a text from a friend still working at Prairie View. Emergency staff meeting called for Monday morning. Apparently today's schedule was half empty. The next week exceeded every projection I'd made in my business plan. We had to extend our hours and bring in a part-time tech just to handle the demand. Word wasn't just spreading through Billings. People were driving in from Hardin, Columbus, even as far as Miles City. The whole county's talking about what you did, one rancher told me while I examined his prize bull. Standing up to those corporate types takes guts. I hadn't intended to become some kind of symbol, but that's apparently what happened. People shared stories about VetCorp's new pricing and policies, comparing them to our transparent fees and common-sense approach to animal care. By the end of our first month, we had registered 280 animals in our system, way ahead of the 150 I'd projected in my business plan. But here's what really surprised me. It wasn't just former Prairie View clients. We were getting new customers from all over the region, people who'd been driving to Bozeman or Great Falls because they didn't trust the corporate clinics. By late spring, about 3 months after we'd opened, Dr. Hoffman came by to see the new place. I was in the middle of a routine surgery when Nancy told me he was in the waiting room. "Dr. Hoffman, what brings you to town?" "I had to see this for myself," he said, looking around with obvious pride. "You've built something special here, Matt." As we toured the clinic, staff and clients greeted him warmly. Many said they missed him but were thrilled with how things had turned out. "I made a mistake selling to VetCorp," he admitted as we finished the tour. "I should have talked to you first about taking over the practice. Everything worked out the way it was supposed to," I told him. "Besides, this way we get to start fresh, do things our way." That same week, I got an email that brought everything full circle. It was from Carl Donovan, requesting a meeting to discuss the veterinary landscape in Billings and explore potential collaboration opportunities. I smiled as I typed my reply. "I'm available Tuesday at 2 p.m. Nothing personal, just business." When Carl showed up, he looked different, less confident, more desperate. Turns out VetCorp was struggling in Billings. They'd lost about 50% of their client base in 6 months, and corporate was asking hard questions about the acquisition. "Look, Matthew, maybe we got off on the wrong foot," he started. "There might be opportunities for cooperation here, referrals, shared services, that kind of thing." "What kind of referrals?" I asked. "Well, you're obviously doing well with the basic care market. We could focus on specialized procedures, emergency services." I leaned back in my chair. "Carl, here's the thing. My clients don't see me as basic care. They see me as their vet. When their animals need emergency surgery or specialized treatment, they want me to handle it or at least be involved in the decision." His face fell as he realized what I was saying. VetCorp had turned veterinary medicine into a commodity, but pet owners don't want commodities when it comes to their animals. They want relationships. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now you figure out how to run a business that actually serves its community instead of just extracting profit from it." Carl left without another word. Looking around at the thriving practice we'd built, filled with wagging tails, grateful families, and the team I trusted, I realized something important. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just succeeding, it's creating the place you were always meant to build. Tommy starts his junior year at Montana State next month, still planning on vet school. Sarah's latest scans came back clear for the second year running. And every morning when I drive up to Rimrock Veterinary Clinic, I see that hand-painted sign, "Where animals come first." That's not just marketing, that's a promise. And unlike VetCorp, it's a promise we keep every single day.